today, if I had to do it all over again, I'd say bring it on. I'll take COVID to get what I got. Hi, my name is Duane Schwartz, and first I want to thank the church for allowing me to share a little bit of my testimony and the goodness of my God. I guess I'll start with, I'm 65. I've been married to my wife Diane for 45 years. We have 3 grown children, Aaron, Amy, and Eli, and 6 granddaughters. So we're very blessed with family. I want to share a little bit about how I grew up. I'm the oldest of 5, and then eventually I'm now the oldest of 13. The family grew over the years, but I am the oldest of the original 5, and I grew up in a 2-parent home until the age of 12, and then my dad left, and I've come to realize that a lot of my issues, my anger, came from that point, and I'm not blaming my father. I'm just saying that's a product of how I grew up, and not realizing that how intense that anger would become over my life. And so over the years, I just learned to deal with it in destructive ways. One of those was I started to drink early, 14, 15. I started smoking, doing a lot of the things that young people shouldn't be doing. But that was my outlet, where I put my anger. Well, we got married in 1980. We moved to Sarasota, Florida in 82, and we attended a Mennonite church there, Spirit-filled Mennonite church, where I got saved in 1989. Totally changed my life. Up to that point, Jesus was just Jesus. He wasn't personal to me at all, and I really didn't have a relationship with him at all. But from that point on, I developed a relationship with him. It was very distant. It was never really a close relationship, but I believed and trusted him enough for salvation. But that's kind of how it ended, because that's really how I grew up. It wasn't like having a relationship with Jesus every day, like by praying or anything was of great importance. But we became involved in the church. We led different Bible studies and small groups, but Jesus was always at arm's length for me. And I still dealt with the anger, but not in so much of the destructive ways that I had before. It was just, I only let him in so far. But over the years, we moved back to Michigan, and I still dealt with a lot of anger and a lot of, I just never felt accepted. I just never felt like I was good enough. And so anyways, I'll jump ahead to 2015. I had taken on a new job at the company I worked for. A lot of new responsibilities, a lot of stress, and my family was grown. The girls had gotten married and moved out. Our youngest son was preparing to go to college, and we had lived in a rather large home for the last 15 years, and I just felt like it was time to downsize. I thought that was the next step, and that we should take that. And I believed that my wife and I were in agreement on that, but it turned out that we were not so much in agreement. And but I kept on with that idea, and we eventually sold the house and chose to move to Sturgis, where my job took a lot more of my time than it had in the past, so I was closer to work. And we were attending a church in Sturgis, so it made it easier to, even for that. And we were involved in the church. We were on the hospitality team, and were attending different groups. And so we were doing what Christian people do, but still dealing with anger and mistrust, and not really understanding what a father-son relationship looked like. I had promised myself that I would be a good father and a good husband, and I did my best to try and be that. But somewhere around 2015, I felt like after we sold the house, my marriage was really kind of falling apart, to put it mildly. We grew apart. We were kind of living in the same house, but really not living together very well. I still loved my wife, and we still tried to live a normal Christian life. But the reality was, it was pretty phony. It was pretty fake. So the next couple of years, we settled in, and I started to drink. And I guess this was a new way of dealing with the anger that I felt. And now understanding that the anger that I'm feeling was directed at my Heavenly Father. Not understanding why I had to go through all this, and now why my marriage was more or less falling apart, not understanding that. Why I felt like he was punishing me. And I'd already been through it, so I didn't deserve it, I didn't think. I didn't feel like I deserved that. So I became more angry, and I drank more. And the more I drank, the more angry I became. By 2017, I had pretty much given up on my marriage, and had already kind of processed in my mind that I wanted a divorce. And it's kind of weird to say that, because that was one of the things that, because of the way my parents ended up, that I promised myself I would never consider. We wouldn't even talk about that. We'd never use that word. But in 2017, I did, and I was going to move towards getting a divorce. That was kind of around the fall of 17. Well, my son was getting ready to get married in May of 18. So I felt like I didn't want to mess that up for him. I decided that I would stay, and and I talked with my wife, and she understood that I wanted out, and that I was going to stick around until Eli got married, and then we'll work our divorce out. Well, 2018 came, Eli got married, my drinking had intensified. I was drinking every day. Basically, I was living life buzzed, is what it was. I even went to his wedding, I'm ashamed to say, having drank. And even at the wedding, even at the reception, I was drinking. And a lot of shame in that, but at any rate, that's where I was spiritually and emotionally. So Eli got married, and we continued to live in the same house, and I guess at some point made the decision that we would just see where it went. We were still together. We weren't going to share anything with our children. We would just try and fake it, as best we could, and just see, maybe we would stay together. I didn't know, but I had gotten to the point where I didn't care anymore. I didn't care whether she stayed or she left, or I stayed or I left. It just didn't matter anymore. So I basically told her, I said, you can hang around, but this is what you get. This is the man I'm going to be, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Well, she stuck it out in spite of that horrible, the way I treated her. And we continued to live our lives, and they weren't necessarily, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had, I guess I need to say that we had stopped going to church. Well, I stopped going to church. She continued to go to church, but I had totally given up on God. 2017 was the end of anything I wanted to do with God. I just I didn't care anymore because I didn't think He cared. But Diane continued to go to church for a while after that, probably a year or so after that. And then 2019 came, and my drinking was totally out of control. I was a functioning alcoholic by that time. And in September of 2019, my brother, who was my best friend, committed suicide. And I thought my life was over. I didn't want to go on, but I didn't feel I had any options. But from that point on, my anger was towards God was I don't even know how to explain how angry I was.
You blamed him for everything.
Yeah, I blamed him for the weather. I blamed him for anything and everything. Everything that happened to me was his fault. And to my shame, I would curse him and tell him to leave me alone. And so I lived the next year after Bob's life ended. I lived with even more anger and alcohol. Sometime in 2020, August, I want to say, I was working in the basement of the home that we were remodeling at the time, and something happened. And as usual, I threw something, cursed God, and at that point, something happened. I don't know how to explain it really. Something clicked in me, and I cursed him, and I said, I am done with you. And I said, I don't want nothing to do with you, and I want you to leave me alone, and why don't we just get this over with? Why don't you just end my life now, and let's be done with this. It's not worth it anymore. And I remember in that moment feeling like there was no way back. It was absolutely the end of my life. That I had lost all hope. There was no hope at all. And it was the most incredible feeling. The most empty feeling I'd ever had. So, moving on, in the next month or so, we would, we'd been dealing with COVID at work and, in our communities for quite a while before that, but I had gotten up one Monday morning, and shortly after I had this conversation with God, that I didn't feel well. So I told my wife I didn't feel well. Pretty much at work they were saying, if you don't feel good, go to the doctor, get tested, and stay home until you find out. So I did that. I went in Monday morning, got tested, stayed home. Wednesday they called and said, you have COVID. And I said, great, I got a week staying at home where I can just drink and watch TV all by myself while Diane's at work. So that's what I did. I drank and watched TV and I dealt with, it was continually getting worse. I was actually mocking. I would take pictures of my temperature, 102, 103. I think one time it was 104. I would take pictures and send it to my wife laughing about it. So that was Monday it started. By Sunday, I had gotten so bad that my wife, Diane, asked me if she could take me to the hospital. And I said, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. They won't want me there anyways, I'm sick. Well, eventually she convinced me to go. Well, that was on September 6th. Not realizing that once I got to the hospital, it would be 5 months before I walked back in the door of my home. They took x-rays that night, showed me the x-rays, didn't mean anything to me. But they said, well, we want to keep you overnight. And I said, no, I'm going home. He convinced me to stay anyways. So my plan was on September 9th, which was 3 days later, was to take my bottle of whiskey and my cigars and go sit on the bench where my brother had committed suicide in Kalamazoo. And that was my plan. That's why I didn't want to stay at the hospital. Somehow in my mind, I wasn't sick enough that I wasn't going to do that yet. But anyways, on the day that I was going to go up to the bench and have my whiskey, instead I was being transferred to Parkview, Fort Wayne, where for the next 3 months I would be fighting for my life. So they admitted me into Parkview Regional Medical Center on September 9th. On September 21st, they would put me on ECMO, which is the highest form of life support there is. I would be on ECMO from September 21st to November 6th, I think. Well, during that time, my family had been told several times that they needed to come say goodbye, that I probably wouldn't survive.
We couldn't see you at that time.
And yeah, back then the hospitals were isolating anyone with COVID, so I couldn't have any visitors, which I don't know how much difference it would have made, because I was, from about September 17th on, I don't have any memory. So, but at any rate, the nurses were the only ones that were in my room. My family couldn't visit. I guess we did have a few phone conversations, but I don't recall any of that. On September 26th, my mother, who had been admitted before me to Parkview Regional Medical Center,
I think it was after you.
passed away. And I wouldn't find that out till December 2nd, when I woke up long enough to ask how Mom was. And that's when they told me that she had passed away. I remember Diane being there when I woke up on December 2nd, and I remembering the nurse or someone saying, "Do you want to see a chaplain?" And I remember saying, "No, I don't want to see a chaplain." I still had that anger that I had before I got sick. So at any rate, I was out again December 2nd. The next time I would have any memory again would be around my birthday, which was the 13th. But they had moved me on December 2nd to Plainwell, Michigan, to another acute care facility where they would take out my trach and my chest tubes and try and get me to eat again, try and get me to sit up on the edge of the bed and things like that.
Because you had lost so much weight too.
I had lost, I went in the hospital at 205, and by the time they transferred me from Fort Wayne to Plainwell, I was 152 pounds. So I had lost all of my strength, all of my core. I couldn't sit up on the edge of the bed by myself. So I would continue there until December 24th, I'd gotten strong enough that they could move me to Grand Rapids, to Mary Free Bed, where they would continue physical therapy so that I could gain some weight and regain some of my strength. So I would be there from December 24th until the day I came home, which was February 6th of 2021. Well, while I was at Mary Free Bed, I started to hear stories about what God had done in my life, all the miracles that I had received, just from the smallest of things. Back then, the beds were full, hospitals were full. There was one bed available at Plainwell. When they needed to move me, there was one bed available. When they needed to move me from Plainwell to Grand Rapids to Mary Free Bed, there was one bed available. The doctors that I seen, the doctor I seen at LaGrange first, had just moved here from New Jersey. So he had enough experience with COVID to understand that I wasn't going to make it if I didn't get more help. So he's the one that had me transferred to Fort Wayne, and there was a whole army of people. Dr. Joshi had just been to a seminar on COVID that had shared with him that leaving someone on ECMO a little bit longer than what is typical has benefited some patients. COVID patients. So when all the other doctors were saying, we've seen this before, he's not going to make it, let's just take him off the ECMO, he fortunately was the head of the department and said, no, we're going to leave him on, for a few more days. So he did that, and I thank God for that. But there was so many miracles along the way that I still don't know everything that God had done. But he had a plan, and there wasn't anyone going to stand in his way of seeing me through this. So I came home on February 9th. I remember being at Mary Free Bed, and I look back on it now, and I started playing, I would start listening to Christian radio, which I hadn't done in years. But I still wasn't praying. I still wasn't, really, there's still a lot of, when you're on as many drugs as I was on, there's still a lot of confusion and cloudiness, even though you're awake and functioning.
The nurses and the doctors told you all the time that you shouldn't do it at Mary Free Bed.
So I started listening to Christian radio, and the doctors and nurses were constantly telling me what a miracle I am. And I remember my cardiologist got down on her knees in front of my wheelchair one time in the hallway, and she said, Duane, you are a miracle of God. And she was emotional. And she was a teacher at a Christian school too. And her whole class put together notes and letters. Anyways, that's a different one. But it was in that moment when she for some reason, it really clicked that God had really done something for me, which in my mind, he had never done much for me anyways. But in that moment, I was overwhelmed with his goodness. And so anyways, from then on, I listened more to gospel music, but I still wasn't praying, and I guess I didn't really feel the anger, but I didn't think about it much either. But then I came home on February 9th, and I remember Diane had to be home for a couple weeks with me, and then she had to go back to work, so I was here by myself. And so I started to read my Bible. I really started with little devotionals. They could keep my attention longer. But I started to pray a little bit, and it was like, a little bit more and a little bit more, and God was drawing me back to Himself. And one day, while sitting on the couch, praying, He just fell on me, and I totally fell apart. I don't know how long I cried. I don't know how long I cried out to Him, but I begged for His forgiveness. And I thanked Him for all that He had done for me. And I asked Him to please come back into my life. And it was then that I realized that He hadn't given up on me. In spite of me pretty much demanding that He leave me alone and just leave me alone. I didn't want anything to do with Him. But He had overlooked that. And He had forgiven me, and we were going to have a relationship. So I'm just so grateful for all that God's done, and that person that's out there that feels like God's given up on you, or that you can give up on Him. It's a lie. It's a lie. He doesn't give up. And just as the prodigal son, he wants that relationship. He wants us to return to Him and to run to Him. And that's where I am today. I am just so grateful for a loving, patient, long-suffering, merciful God. And unfortunately, it took COVID to get me back to that place where I could get rid of my anger and forgive my dad, forgive myself, and to realize that God wasn't to blame for any of it, but He had been there with me the whole time. After coming home and my relationship with the Lord had been healed, God had really done something in my marriage too. My marriage, I believe, was over and we were just going through the motions, but since that time, He has slowly given me a love for my wife that I didn't even know was possible. I had no idea that you could love someone the way that I love her, and to be loved by her the way that I'm loved is something that doesn't come with effort. It comes with the grace of God. I think, I really believe that He worked another miracle in my life. I love my wife in ways that I never imagined was possible. And that is something truly to be grateful for in today's society where marriage is so disposable. But He took something that was so broken, and He worked another miracle and healed us. And I am so grateful for that too. God is so good. If we'll just allow Him to work, to submit ourselves, surrender ourselves to Him. And He's so faithful. In December of 23, Diane and I moved to Florida for the winter, and I was on 4 liters of oxygen. And during the winter down there, my health had really declined, and I was really struggling with needing more oxygen. So when we came home, I realized that I needed to go up to 8 liters of oxygen. So we bumped it to 8 liters, went back to the pulmonologist. The pulmonologist really didn't have much to say. He said, your options are lung transplant or, continue on with the care that you're getting now in hopes that, it won't get any worse. So we chose the path of lung transplant. We just thought, well, it can't hurt to go see what they have to say. And that's basically what he told us. Just go see what they have to say. So we went to the hospital, and before we knew it, in that first session, we basically signed up to start the process. That wasn't our plan. We've received many prophetic words that say that God's going to heal my lungs. Even my son has received that. He sees clear X-rays. So our plan all along was to trust the Lord for healing. But we thought, it can't hurt to go ahead and see the doctors. So they thought I was a good candidate. So by the time, January 25, we started down that path with testing and all kinds of requirements. I needed to lose 60 pounds. I needed to reduce my steroid use. There was just a lot of things that needed to happen, which I thought would have been a miracle anyways. Well, lo and behold, we did. We got there. By September of 25, we had met all the requirements, which was a shock. So the doctors went ahead and said, okay, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this. So they put us on the list, which is truly a miracle. We weren't on the list very long, and one night I said something to my wife about how she felt about being on the list, and she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I feel like maybe we should come off the list. And she said, I feel the same way. So we just felt like the Lord was speaking to both of us that, we should come off the list. And in all that, a lot of prayer, believe me, a lot of prayer, because that was my last hope for a healing from medicine. But somewhere along the way, the Lord spoke to me and said, when did I become Plan B? And I'll just never forget that. And I said, I repented, and I said, I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't. It just kind of, I guess I got caught up in the challenge of them telling me that I needed to do all this stuff. And I felt like, maybe they didn't think I could do it. But we did it. Diane and I did it together. And so I think that's where I got caught up in that. But at any rate, he wasn't Plan B. But we hadn't made the decision yet to call them and actually tell them, listen, we want to come off the list. But so we prayed over it a lot. And one Sunday morning, Pastor Don preached a sermon, and I can't even tell you.
Was it Don or was it?
No, it was Don.
No, see, it
was Pastor Don preached a message that absolutely confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that we had made the right decision to come off the list. In fact, it was so confirmed that I actually went home a little angry. And I don't even know who I was angry at. Not Don, not God, it was just, I don't know. But it wasn't angry, but it was, I knew what we needed to do, and we needed to call. So that following week, we made the call, which totally shocked them. But at this point, we're off the list, and we're going to trust the Lord for whatever comes next. If that's healing here, or if that's healing in my new body. but we know that he has a plan. And the one thing I want to say is that the peace that passes all understanding, that the Bible talks about, is real. There's a peace when we made that decision together. There's a peace that absolutely overwhelmed us. So much so that you question it. You're like, this is, no, something's wrong. How can you have peace? We're not thinking about something here. But it truly was a peace that we couldn't even get rid of. And we still have it today. We still have that same peace that we know that we are in God's will. We are walking in the path that he's chosen for us. And we don't know where that path goes necessarily. We're believing for healing. I'm not saying that there's some days that, I struggle a little bit. But at the end of the day, I rejoice. I can rejoice in knowing that God has a plan, and He has chosen me for this to bring honor and glory to Him. And I want to live a life that is pleasing to Him. I want to live a life that honors and glorifies Him, that brings hope to others, to trust in Him, to believe in Him, and to know that He is sovereign. You're not a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. This is for His honor and glory. I think a lot of times of the healing that Jesus did, but God has just shown up in tremendous ways. I don't know.
Yeah, every day.
God doesn't waste pain, and I know the pain that I'm experiencing is temporary. That's something that He keeps making more and more real to me. The pain that I'm experiencing right now, the suffering, is all for His honor and glory. And I rejoice in the fact that my life is bringing Him honor and glory. I don't want to disappoint Him. I don't want Him to say that, you could have done more. I want Him to say, you did a great job. And that I'm proud of you. I don't want to waste it. I don't want to waste the pain and the suffering that He's given me, because I know that it's for His honor and glory, and that makes it worthwhile. It truly makes it worthwhile. I don't know, there's so much more I could say with all the people, like people that support us, that greet us on a Sunday morning, or my Edge Bible College classmates have been awesome in supporting my family, friends. God has just placed so many wonderful people in my life to help carry this. I'm not on this journey alone. That's a church community and family have carried more than they'll ever know of the burden for me, through prayer, through just, a friendly hug or handshake.
Well, when you were in the hospital, how many people were praying that we don't even know?
Yeah. Something that we appreciate so much is, we sat at home, partly because I couldn't get out. I was overwhelmed with PTSD when I initially got home, but when we started watching Firm on TV, and I thought to myself, well, this is good enough. But then we started going there, and to feel the welcome that we received was amazing. And if you're sitting at home and you think you're getting enough fellowship because you're watching it on TV, you're wrong. There's nothing like being in the presence of God and worshiping and fellowshipping with brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Just a warm handshake, a hand on my shoulder, an acknowledgement that I see you is something that you won't get from sitting at home on a couch. And that is part of God's ministry to us, is using brothers and sisters to extend. We are an extension of his arms and of his hands. And to not experience that physical touch is, you're really missing out. And a while back I started to use that excuse that I could, well, I'm sick, I've got oxygen, and it's just a hassle to go to church. And it'll be okay, I'll just watch it at home, it'll be good. And I remember it wasn't long after that. Me and God we have our own vocabulary, but he said, "What are you doing? Why are you at home?" He said, "Get to church." And that's the way he talks to me. He just said, "Get to church." And I'm like, yeah, I need to get to church. And I love it. It doesn't, Diane, she shoulders that burden of getting me ready, prepping tanks. And I know people don't see all that she does, but it's a tremendous burden for her. And she doesn't see it that way. But it's a tremendous burden, and it takes a lot of energy from her to get everything around, to get me to church, to get me in the church, to get me out of the church, to get me back in the house. All that takes a tremendous amount of energy. So I use her as an excuse sometimes, and the Lord said, "Don't do that." That's her blessing. That's her ministry. Don't steal that from her. So that's helped. It's helped a lot. But yeah, I'll shut up now. I think I've shared enough. But just the work that he's done in my marriage is. I had given up on my marriage the same way I had given up on him. It's just like, there's no fixing this. There is no fixing this. I want out, and I don't care who it hurts. I just want out. But fortunately, I must have cared enough, because I didn't do it to Eli. I just couldn't ruin. I couldn't ruin that.
Well, that's another one of God's timings. Any other time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if the wedding wouldn't have been, I would have.
Yeah.
And then to think, what would have happened to me if I'd have been on my own with COVID, without Diane, without my family, because who knows? I mean, I'm sure my family would have been fairly angry with me. And said, he got what he deserved, he left. But yeah, God's timing and the way that he healed my marriage. Between the healing of my marriage and the relationship, oh my goodness.
Can we do it again?
I would go through COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Today, if I had to do it all over again, I'd say bring it on.
Yeah.
I'll take COVID to get what I got. And I'll if this is the best it gets, I'm good with that.
Yep.
What is that song we sing? If the highest I get is the.
Is that your feet?
Huh?
Is that your feet?
Is that your feet? Yes.
Yeah.
That's good enough. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. If this is as good as it gets, and if it gets worse, we're going to find joy in it.
Yep. We will.
Heaven is just a door away. And praise God, I'm ready to to walk through that door. And but I want to go, and he wants me to go, and I want to be here. I want to be here doing his work. And there's days, most days actually, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I'm not doing enough for him. But I'm doing what I can. I just feel like there's people out there that are giving up, like I did. They're overwhelmed with life. Life is hard anymore. Life is really hard.
It is.
And
This is our temporary life.
but they don't have to do it on their own, like I was. He's there offering hope. It's the only place to get true hope. There is, everything else is fake. And the life we live has just gotten so hard. And especially for young people. I'm so grateful that I'm old.
That's the only time.
because what you guys are going through, what the young people are going through is nothing compared to what we had to go through. I mean, you guys live in such a challenging world. My prayers are for the youth a lot of times, and for my children and grandchildren. You are going to need a deeper relationship with the Lord to survive the next years. A fake or a shallow relationship with him. He said he cuts the time short because even the elite wouldn't make it. I understand that more and more now. Even those, the real believers are going to struggle because the times are going to get harder, and your dependence on him is going to be a requirement, not an option. That's my belief. It is not going to be an option.